with the Rancho Penasquitos Town Council, and the Ed Brown Community Center, Senior Center has been gracious enough not only to allow us to have this here, but they also supplied all the refreshments. So we want to thank them for that, including Marla. Marla Cruz and Valerie Brown, so thank you for that. And we want to thank all of you for coming here tonight, and then also the two candidates who will be here. We have Nathan Fletcher and then Bob Filner will be here. So and I want to remind everyone that if they have any questions, you can bring them up here. We're not going to be raising hands. There's members in our back. We have volunteers. Mike's over there in that corner with pencils and 3x5s. Marla's over by the door with them. And then you can just bring them over here, and then they'll be giving them to us. Also, there's refreshments over there, and if you need the bathroom, it's outside. It's not an outhouse. It's just you have to go out the door that you came in and go around the corner and go around the corner, and then you'll see a ladies' room and a men's room. We ask that you shut your phones off or at least put them on vibrate so that you don't disturb everyone while the candidates are doing their question and answer portion of this. And at this time I'm going to introduce Andy Berg. Andy Berg is the president of the Rancho Penasquitos Town Council. Andy?
Just a real quick on the town council. We're a 501c3, much like the community council here. And I'll give Robin a chance at the end to talk a little bit about them. Best known for the street fair, the Fiesta de los Penasquitos, coming up again on Sunday, May 6th. So I hope to see you out there outside the Bonds Shopping Center on Black Mountain Road. You can get on our website, rpcouncil.com, and find out more about us. So let me tell you what we're going to be doing here tonight. First off, as Robin said, remember, write questions, although we already have quite a few questions ready. What we're going to be doing tonight is each candidate will get a 3-minute opening, and maybe Assemblyman Fletcher will take all 6 minutes, and we'll go from there.
I'll take my 3 minutes, too.
We got a couple other candidates on here. That's one of the questions, actually. Then, as moderators, Robin and I will alternate asking questions of the candidates. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Michelle from our town council will be sitting there in the front with a green sign to start, a yellow sign when there's 30 seconds left, and a red sign means your time is up for that question. When we run out of time at the end of the evening, the candidates will get 2 minutes for closing remarks. So since Congressman Filner is still on his way, we didn't want to make you wait any longer. So running in, is he here? Or? 1 minute. Okay, well, we'll start with the opening speech anyway. No. We give Assemblyman Fletcher 3 minutes for an opening, and I think everybody does want you to include somewhere in that opening the announcement you made a week or so ago about leaving the Republican Party.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Karen, and thank you all of you for coming out this evening. Can you hear me okay? No. Did it go off? Can you? I'll use my big boy voice. When I was in school, there'd be 4 or 5 of us in the back of the room talking, and the teacher would always say, "Nathan, I hear you." I was always the one that got in trouble. So thank you for having us. We'll just get started, and then when the microphone comes back on, I'll do another opening statement. I often joke. I always say you have a clear choice in this election between a candidate on the far right, a candidate on the far left, and one in the middle. But tonight you only have one choice. That's me until Bob gets here, and then you'll have 2 choices. But I do think, in all seriousness, by any measurable standard, the city of San Diego has really had a rough decade. If you're a small business owner struggling to make it, you know how rough it's been. If you're a teacher in a classroom and you got 35, 36, maybe 38 kids in your class, you know it's been a rough decade. If you just drive on our roads here in Rancho Bernardo, you know it's rough. I mean, it's rough when you drive. And I think that we have an opportunity in this election to truly start to begin a conversation about how do we rebuild our city, how do we rebuild San Diego, how do we turn the page on the divisiveness and the partisanship and the problems of the past. But in order to do that, it's going to take something new. And I represent that, an independent voice. Someone whose only priority and only focus is going to be on solving problems, on rebuilding. In the course of our campaign, we've outlaid laid out detailed plans for how we rebuild the economic base and really become the most competitive place to create 21st century jobs, helping our small businesses grow. Monitored and supported by the California Small Business Association, Biocom, and other groups. We laid out an education plan for how I believe we can really go a long way as a parent with two small children. I think that there's a lot we can do to rebuild our education system. We've also talked about how we restore our city services, how we pave our streets, how we make sure we have enough police officers on the street, and how we rebuild and restore those services moving forward. But I believe that's going to take a mayor that not only has a vision of our city for where we go, someone who has a demonstrated track record of getting things done. So many of you here in Rancho Bernardo stood with us in the aftermath of the Chelsea King tragedy, where we went and we demonstrated that it is possible to sit down with people, regardless of if they're a Republican or a Democrat, to solve a problem and do the right thing. We've done similar things on regulatory reform, on pension reform, on helping people keep their health care. So you need a mayor with a vision, a mayor with a demonstrated ability of working together to get things done, and a mayor with a real desire to serve the public and really advance us forward and rebuild our city moving forward. So thank you for having me. Thank you to my friend Bob Fillman for showing up. And we look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Always going to make an entrance, don't you? Okay, Congressman, just to catch you up on the procedure tonight, we're going to give you 3 minutes for an opening remarks, and I'll let you do that in a second. Then we're going to ask questions of both of you with a 2-minute time limit. Our timekeeper will raise a yellow sign there to show you there's 30 seconds left, and a red that means you're done. At the end of the evening, you'll have 2 minutes each to conclude your remarks. So given Senator Fletcher time for an opening remark, asked him if he wanted to include why he left the Republican Party, so we'll give you the same option for a 3-minute opening remark, and tell us if you're going to leave the Democratic Party or not.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for inviting us. I apologize for being late, but it's important that we appear before all of you because this is a really important decision. And I think you should remember the 2 that didn't show up. No, don't remember them. But again, it's great to be here. And by the way, if you ask anybody in the Congress who the most independent person is in the Congress, that's me. So, I came to San Diego 42 years ago to teach history at San Diego State. I had received my doctorate degree at history at Cornell University, came here, taught. I was on the faculty for 22 years at San Diego State University. When I was there and my children were in elementary school, I got involved in PTA as president of PTA, and the school board tried to close my kid's school, plus a dozen others around the city. So we got involved in trying to save what we thought was an excellent neighborhood school. We found out that the school board was not very responsive, and out of that whole relationship, or that whole situation, I ran for the school board, not ever thinking I'd be in public office. Won with 50.0001% of the vote. Of course, Rancho Bernardo was not in the school district, so that's why I won. It's a joke. And from there, I was elected. I was elected president of the school board, and I think the best thing I've done for San Diego was bring a great superintendent here. Dr. Tom Pazon, who was here for 10 years before he went to serve as Assistant Secretary for Education in Washington. I was elected twice to the City Council, and in fact was elected Deputy Mayor by my colleagues then. And starting in 1992, I had been elected 10 times to the United States Congress. I think my proudest service in the U.S. Congress was as chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, where my chief job was to say to those who have served our nation, like the Marine over here on my right, that yes, we sent you to war, but when you come back, we've got to do everything we can to care for you, to make sure that you get all the honor, dignity, love that a nation can give. We did not do that in Vietnam. We're paying a horrible price for that. I wanted to make sure we didn't welcome them back with indifference with the Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans. And in fact, I wrote the GI Bill for the 21st century, which gives them full college education and the right to buy a house for a low down payment. That's 700,000 veterans from those wars are in college now because of that bill. I'm running for mayor because I want to get out of Washington. No, Washington is pretty dysfunctional. You can't do much. the chief executive of the 8th biggest city in the country can begin to realize our great potential as a city, and in fact, provide leadership which we haven't had for decades, and lead the city finally into the 21st century.
One of the big issues up here is definitely our crumbling infrastructure. And one of the questions from the audience, and maybe you can make it more general, but it says, what would you do as mayor about the potholes in Rancho Bernardo? I think you can add just, all about the crumbling infrastructure. The mayor actually just brought up that, the budget's looking a little better. What would you do to make the infrastructure around here better?
For decades, we have had a CCDC, Center City Development Corporation, which has taken hundreds of millions of dollars per year to build downtown. Now, I used to represent downtown on the city council. I spearheaded the gas lamp development plan. If you've been downtown San Diego, gas lamp is one of the most vibrant places in the whole city. It worked. But there's no longer a need for CCDC because the private sector will move in. Why public subsidy for private development? Let's turn CCDC into a neighborhood investment corporation where we can take that money and look at our neighborhoods. I don't care whether it's Rancho Bernardo or Claremont or Sherman Heights or San Isidro. The neighborhoods of this city have been neglected in favor of downtown. And I can spend 5 minutes in any neighborhood and I will tell you the infrastructure needs, whether they're potholes, whether it's parking, whether it's landscaping, whether it's rec center maintenance or hours or whatever. And most of that stuff does not cost that much. But it changes the quality of life in every neighborhood if you put that money in. Now, I was just in one neighborhood, Sherman Heights, where there's one soccer field for 25,000 people. The kids are playing every single minute on that field. Yet, because there's no night lights, they lose 3 or 4 hours a day. $40,000 would change that neighborhood. We could do that everywhere. If we stopped subsidizing the private development that is downtown, move into the infrastructure of our neighborhoods. They've been neglected for too long, and it's time that we change that.
Thank you. I always like to commend Bob for his work helping veterans. He says he wants to make sure the veterans of the returning wars have full employment and have a job. And I've teased him at events that he can do that by helping me get elected the next mayor. I can help this veteran get a job. But I do appreciate, Bob, your commitment to veterans in the Congress. Rancho Bernardo is facing similar situations to what so many of the other communities are. And I know your problems a little bit more intimately because I've represented you for the last few years in the state assembly. And it strikes me as just painfully obvious that the quality of your roads says a lot about who you are as a city. And it's reflective of a city hall that's not working, of a city government that's not working. If we can't pave your streets, it's a city that really isn't functioning. But even more than that, there's an economic impact. Early in the campaign, one of the first plans we put out was a detailed and comprehensive infrastructure plan for how we do just that. How we repave our streets, how we rebuild our city. And it was interesting because when we announced that, we had infrastructure experts, we had policy experts, we had people that understand how to streamline the process. We brought together the best and the brightest to develop a comprehensive and detailed plan. We also brought out some small businesses to tell the story of the economic impact of bad roads. Put out people who have fleet vehicles. Because we've been rated as having the 8th worst roads, we also have the 8th highest cost of vehicle repair. And that makes our businesses less competitive. So what it's going to take moving forward is a mayor that has a plan, which we do, a mayor that understands that half of the problem is getting the existing money out of the city and on the roads and spent, a mayor that has an ability to work with people to get it done, but also a mayor that understands that filling a pothole is one part of a broader conversation about rebuilding all of our infrastructure, about restoring your services, about restoring your hours at your rec center, your libraries, your parks, because we're talking about rebuilding an entire city. And that starts with potholes, but it runs all the way through our economy, our schools, and all the things that we need to do.
Well, while we're talking about priorities on spending, what is your position on a new stadium for the Chargers, an expansion of the convention center, and a new city hall?
All 3 of those in 2 minutes. So here's. We'll just take one of them. Let's just take the stadium. The conversation for the last decade has been: do you take a bunch of taxpayer funds and build a massive piece of infrastructure that Chargers play football in 8 to 10 times a year? We're not going to do that. If there's a conversation that says, can we build a regional asset you use 300 days a year that returns money to the city general fund, that money can then be invested out in the neighborhoods, then I'm willing to entertain that conversation. But it has to be something that actually provides more funds into the city general fund so we can rebuild our neighborhoods and our communities and our things that are out there. The same holds true with these other things we face, whether it's a city hall or a convention center. You know, we had a decade where politicians made devastatingly bad financial decisions. They gave pension benefits that were too high, they let people retire too early without paying enough money. But they also took those pension funds to do things like build a baseball field and have a convention center. They made short-sighted decisions without negotiating hard and without remembering that your highest priority is not to one interest group or the other. Your highest priority is to the taxpayers and to the citizens. So if we can work out those things, it'll grow our economy, that'll help us keep people employed, and we can demonstrate it's a good return on the investment to the citizens of San Diego to invest in our neighborhoods, then I believe we can do it, and we can get it done. But we're not going to do those things at all costs.
And as part of my Veterans Full Employment Program, I have offered Nathan a job in my administration. If I can give a choice, it'll be a... By the way, the debates, when only the 2 of us show up, are far more friendlier, so civil and substantive than when our 2 friends are here. But let me say a couple words, if I can, if I stay with the time limit, about maybe a couple of those. I love the Chargers, and there's something about a game day that is special about here. But you got a billionaire owner of a private firm that wants almost $1 billion from city taxpayers. I say no. I just say no. But I'm a good negotiator. I'm a tough negotiator. If they say to the city, you know, we want you to invest in our team, not just give us money, so we'll leave town in 5 years after we make hundreds of millions of dollars. What if they said, or I said, I want some partial ownership for our city of the team. So we share in your profits. You don't just take, we share the profits. And let's do some things on a more institutional basis that a lot of the players do now anyway, but help the schools in a more rigorous way. Provide free tickets to the taxpayers who are paying for you but can't even afford to go to the games. Let's, if it's an investment as opposed to a giveaway, I'll negotiate. But, by the way, the convention center financing plan that was just passed by the city council is the most blatant giveaway of taxpayers' money that I have seen in a long time. Usually the giveaway is very subtle. But what they said to hotel owners, most of which are from multinational corporations, you not only have the right to vote for the tax, the TOT, the transit occupancy tax, but you will control the $35 million a year that's supposed to go to the general fund. You will decide how it's spent. That's not what a city council should be doing. And so I will not let those special interests continue the domination of City Hall that we have seen for the past decades and decades.
Keep on the topic of substantive issues. There'll be a pension reform initiative on the ballot this June, and some independent analysts have opined that the city's pension costs are unsustainable, but even some of the proponents of the pension initiative admit that what's on the ballot will cost the city money, at least in the short term, to implement. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about the pension initiative to remove pensions, put people on 401ks going forward. We know both of your positions. You've made them really clear. But for Assemblyman, the question for you is, why are you in favor of this, and can the city afford the upfront costs? And the question for the Congressman is, you said you're opposed to the measure, but what do you have as an alternative to rein in the costs?
Thank you. You know, I am the only one of the 4 candidates who is against Prop B. It is not a pension reform measure. It's a fraud. It does nothing to reform the pension system. It costs almost more than $100 million just to transition. The only savings that come from the proposition, and those are only hope for savings is that there will be a salary freeze for 5 years. You cannot do that with your referendum. You cannot by referendum. That's negotiated with the employees' unions. You cannot say by referendum. This is government by initiative and by, I mean, it's just a silly way to do it. It does nothing. I challenged my opponents to tell me where one nickel comes into the general fund as a result of this pension, so-called pension reform. It doesn't do anything. My plan, Andy, is to, number one, the real horror stories that you hear, $250,000 pensions, that's management folks who get a phony pay raise their last year or two, and then bonuses, and their pensions end up twice their salary. That's criminal. And I say, and I can do it, the mayor, the council can do it today, doesn't need a referendum. No more six-figure pensions. Put a cap on them. We can do that now. The average pension, by the way, is $27,000 in the city. And our employees do not have Social Security. So if you put them on a 401k, and the stock market tanks, they have nothing. That's not fair to people who work 20, 30 years, you know, picking up our trash and cleaning our parks and cleaning the water in our systems. I'm the only one, but to go back to your first question, Andy, we actually can put money in the general fund without new taxes. If we refinance the debt we have, the interest rates are as low as they've ever been, right, in our history. If we refinance the debt, a couple percent, now you do that with your house, you save hundreds of dollars per month. I could save $550 million in 10 years. Put that in the potholes of Rancho Bernardo and smoke it. No, I mean, put that in your pipe. So I think I have a much fairer and also cost-effective plan. Their plan costs money. I get money into the general fund.
Yeah, I support the initiative that's there, and because there's a number of things that are important to consider as you go through and you make this decision. One of the first is the world is changing. Government's always one of the last to change. You know, the world in the private sector has changed dramatically. And what folks get in retirement is Social Security, plus some defined contribution plan. Maybe it's a 401k, maybe it's a defined annuity. But we can design systems for city workers that are fair, that give you a retirement, that ensure that taxpayers are never on the hook again for a series of devastatingly bad financial decisions. Because so many of the potholes that you're facing now are a result of the devastating pension-related decisions that were made over the last decade. And you have an unfunded liability of $2.1 billion. You have an annual required contribution that climbs every year between now and 2025. It drops dramatically in 2026. It'll be a great time to be the mayor. 2026, you'll have a lot of money.
We're looking forward to that.
Bob hopes that's me then. Bob hopes to be that. But I want to be the mayor now. We can address this problem. The same savings Bob talks about from a 5-year freeze in pensionable pay, under his plan, is exactly what we'll do here. We will go in and we'll negotiate that, which significantly lowers that ARC payment, that annual required contribution. We'll do things like make sure specialty pay don't factor into the base pay. And I also actually put out an actual on-paper concrete plan. You can go to my website at nathanfletcher.com and read it, of what I call my day one pension plan, which in addition to the measure that passes, we've laid out a detailed plan for how we do what was described, how you cap the management pensions at $99,000, how you reduce the total compensation for that group. And those are savings that will provide millions of dollars of immediate savings and relief that we can invest back into building our neighborhoods. But the other thing that we have the opportunity to do with the Comprehensive Pension Reform Initiative and with the implementation by the current mayor and the election of the next mayor is turn the page on the last decade of talking about pensions. Because we have other challenges facing our city, how we rebuild our economy, how we rebuild our schools, how we rebuild our neighborhoods. And it's time to move beyond the problems of the past and start talking about those things which are also affecting our quality of life, particularly here in Rancho Bernardo. Thank you.
Andy, may I suggest that you have the chairman's prerogative, that was good give and take here, if we had 30 seconds to go back again, if sure, that would be okay.
That'd be fine, but I'll leave.
Otherwise, we'll go forward.
No, I think it's a good idea. I have another question on the kind of same topic of labor, so you can, answer the last one further if you want. And I think that's a good suggestion for going forward. Do you have an objection to that? Going 2-2, 30-30? I think that's right. Okay. We got a 30-second clock for those. But here's the other question, just concerns managed competition and outsourcing. And again, I think we know your basic positions on it. I want to know if there's any nuance to it. One of the things I think most people get upset about in this community and other communities is it's so black and white. We either believe this and nothing different, or we believe the complete opposite side or nothing different. I mean, so, to Assemblyman Fletcher, are there certain services beyond police fire that we probably shouldn't be outsourcing? And to Congressman Filner, is there ever a time that the private sector maybe could do it better than the public sector does it?
The question comes down to a basic one is does your city government exist to provide services or to provide jobs? And I believe it exists to provide services. And so the challenge that we have before us is how do we most effectively, most efficiently deliver those services? Now there are a lot of things. I was a Marine for a decade. Right? We're not going to privatize the Marine Corps. I have great concern with some of the private security elements that have been brought in to do that. We would never, Andy, to your point, we would never privatize the police department because they would only patrol in Rancho Bernardo because it'd be cheaper. Right? There are things that are going to be core services. But there are a lot of things that I think that there's a fair conversation to be had to say could it be done in the private sector, like the print shop. Could you do printing? And is there a natural competitive check that can happen where if we have the city workers bid against someone in the private sector, and the city workers won, which they've won all of the bids, then that's okay, then they should be able to do it. But it provides that competitive check, and it allows us to reap savings, it allows us to find savings, and we can reinvest those savings back out into the community. But you have to make sure it's done right. We put out a transparency plan today, and one of the things I said as mayor is any private contract that is signed, we will post that contract online. We'll post any contributors or supporters who work for that company or affiliated with that company. But we will also develop performance metrics to ensure that what was promised is actually being delivered. And we will hold those companies accountable for doing that. Because if I stand up and say as mayor, I want to hold our city workforce accountable for results by things like performance-based budgeting, then we absolutely have to hold any private company that's doing city work to that exact same standard. But at the end of the day, it's about finding the most efficient, effective delivery of service where you, the resident, where you, the taxpayer, have your services delivered by the city, and we can go back to you and say we are spending your money as wisely and as prudently as possible.
I would agree with Nathan's last framing of what we want as services for our city. But I would approach it a slightly different way. That is, look, as much as we want efficiency and responsiveness and, excellence, etc., the city is not a profit-making institution because it serves everybody. Like the U.S. Postal Service delivers to everybody, no matter where you live. You cannot make money. FedEx cannot make money doing what the Postal Service does. We try to educate every student. You cannot make money. Every student has something different. And most of the savings that have come into the so-called managed competition debate have been false savings. Sure, you can have a cheaper product if you don't pay benefits to your working people. How does that help our city when people don't even have livable wages? Yes, you can have a cheaper service like they're doing Miramar landfill. But you know how they got the private sector to bid? The city keeps the liability. Where is that? I mean, most of everything that we can contract out is false savings that misses the point of what a public agency does. We are serving the people. And we try in a way no other nation tries to do. No other nation in the world tries to do what we do. And you can't make money when you serve everybody. You just cannot do it. Yes, you want it efficient. We do. Yes, we want responsive. Yes, we don't want lazy working people. Yes, we want accountability. Yes, we should be able to fire bad, employees when they don't perform. But most of the functions that government is doing, and I'm willing to look at something, is because the private sector can't make money on it. So it's left to the public sector to do it. And so we have to live with that, but we have to have a mayor, and I think both of us would be that, who demand the kind of accountability and efficiency that you all deserve as taxpayers. You're paying for it. So we got to give you the results that you deserve.
you, gentlemen. Before I ask the next question, I just want to let you know that the Rancho Bernardo patch is doing a live stream, and right now you have almost 60 viewers watching you at home. So that really is impressive.
The whole city council and its staff?
Am I watching?
American Idol people.
Okay, the next question is, how do you propose to address the synthetic drug issues in our city? That's a very big issue these days, and unfortunately a lot of our young people in the community are using it, not just in Rancho Bernardo, but throughout the whole city. So how do you propose to address this issue in the city?
I'm not sure that the word synthetic should interfere with our enforcement of drug laws. That is, I don't care how they're made. If they have this impact on children or adults that we know that, that drugs do, then we have to enforce the law and make sure the law can be enforced against that. I would try to, but you know, we have as a city and as a society, as a nation, a better job to do on education with our children. And how to deal with them when they are in the position of being seduced by drugs and gangs, etc. That's the issue, really, because we have laws. The question is, how do we make sure our children are kept out of those temptations? And the best way, as I've tried to advance, I've served on the school board. I'm the only candidate who's put his children through the public school system in San Diego. My grandchildren are now in the public school system. But I understand that the whole community has to be involved in education, especially, I'll say, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., from 6 to 6. Before school and after school, because we give the school system 9 to 3 or roughly that. Why isn't our whole community involved in making sure the kids do not get in a position where they're tempted by drugs? We have world-class museums in Balboa Park. Why aren't 1,000 students there supervised, learning from those museums, learning how exhibits are set up, how a business runs? The Navy, the Padres, the Chargers, big businesses like Qualcomm, SAIC, small businesses. All of them can be involved in the education of our kids. Many students, as you know, their parents are working at 2 jobs, or they can't be home after school. That's when the kids are most tempted. Let's make sure that our recreation activities, our social activities, our learning activities continue after school. That's the best way to deal with a drug problem in San Diego or anywhere.
Both of my children will be in San Diego Public Schools. They're just one of them's still teething, so he's not quite ready, but he'll be there. You know, I think you got to have a mayor that spends time in the community and understands the problems. You know, we've seen Poway, Carmel Valley, Rancho Bernardo are all areas that have been hit by the problem of synthetic drugs. And this is not a problem that requires a better enforcement of the law. It's a problem that requires a changing of the law to meet a new threat, to meet a new danger, to meet something that didn't exist previously. So what I did last year was reach out to colleagues of mine from both parties, and we authored legislation to provide for better enforcement, for better tracking, for better monitoring of synthetic drugs. We passed that hand in hand with Republicans, Democrats, now an independent, with the law enforcement community, and it took us one step forward. But we continued to monitor the situation, because we rolled up our sleeves, we did the hard work of watching. And we worked with the law enforcement community, and they came back and said there's another change that's needed. And just a month or so ago, Assemblyman Ben Wayso, a colleague of mine, along with leaders of the law enforcement community, announced new legislation that we were authoring together to provide, again, better enforcement, better tracking, better limitations on synthetic drugs, because our highest priority in the city charter is public safety. Our highest priority in our heart is protecting our children. So we need someone that's going to go out, and I'm honored in this election to be the choice of law enforcement, to be the choice of the San Diego police officers who worked with me on Chelsea's Law, who worked with me when we reformed the retiree health care to save millions of dollars, who worked with me on human trafficking, who worked with me on addressing the synthetic drugs issue. I'm honored to be the choice of the San Diego schools police officers who said Nathan understands and knows what it takes to protect our children in schools from things like synthetic drugs. And as mayor, these efforts will continue. We'll continue to identify problems, identify solutions, look at old problems in a new light, and always have a focus on making sure we're getting it done for our kids. Thank you.
Changing gears just a little bit, we have a couple of interesting questions regarding homeless situations. We have a large percentage of our homeless people are veterans who fought to serve our country. What do you have as plans to help these homeless vets get back on their feet?
Yeah, this is an issue that hit me personally. When I came home from Iraq in 2004, I was home for a period of time before I deployed and went overseas again, and I wanted to get involved and help veterans issues. And it just strikes me that if we as a society have the moral authority to send you to war, then we have the moral obligation to take care of you when you come home. And if we can find the money, the federal government can find the money to send you to war, and they can find the money to take care of you when you come home. And it's just unacceptable that we're taking young men and women and we're putting them in combat, we're exposing them to horrendous, awful things, and then we're not treating them to take care of them when they come home. And so I went out as a part of these surveys and these counts to find homeless veterans, because there are resources that are available to them. There are things that we need to do. And as mayor, I will work to tackle the homeless problem, not just with the veterans. And it's important we do it for the veterans, because we have to honor their service and take care of these folks who I serve in arms with. But doing that not only takes care of them, but it sends a powerful message to my two little boys. George Washington had a great line. He said, future generations' willingness to serve will be directly tied to how they perceive previous generations were treated. And we've got to make sure we're communicating that we value that service. But as mayor, we'll work to address our homeless problem, not only with our veterans, but with all the homeless. Because it says a lot about your city, just like your roads, by the quality of how you treat your homeless. And it's not just downtown. People will talk about doing the counts of homeless. And the last count I did, I actually came up the 15 corridor. And we went throughout Mira Mesa, throughout Scripps, throughout these regions. Because homeless is a citywide problem. And we need a mayor that's going to build a coalition of government entities working on it, of faith entities. A lot of our leaders in church and religious organizations are very committed to trying to address this. Those in the corporate sector who have an obligation to help us step forward and address these problems. We're going to bring all of these groups together. We're going to have a strategic plan to end homelessness in San Diego, and then we're going to go person by person and actually get it done so that we're not only taking care of our veterans, but we're taking care of all San Diegans. Thank you.
I love the campaign today, to watch this young man learn these things, you know, that many of us have been working on for decades. When I became member of Congress, I asked to be a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. And my colleagues elected me as chairman in 2006. And I set to work to advance an agenda that said, I don't care if you're from World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Gulf War, Iraq and Afghanistan. We're going to make sure we take care of you as a nation. And in those 4 years that I was chair, we did more for veterans than people have done for decades combined. We advanced the budget in such ways to put tens of billions of dollars into mental health care, to bring parity to the mental health treatment, as well as the VA had been doing, the Veterans Administration had been doing physical health care. And I announced, standing next to President Obama, we announced my plan to have a zero tolerance for homelessness within 5 years. This was last year. And we put the money in, we've advanced the programs. Now, veterans are, depending on where you are, almost half of the homeless on the streets tonight. So if the federal program, which was my program, actually works, we will have half the difficulty that we have as a city. And we as a city should confront and must confront this issue. It affects us not only in an economic way and in ways that disturb us, but as human beings. We've got to confront it. And we don't have a problem of 100,000 homeless that LA does. We have a few thousand if the veterans are taken care of with the federal programs. And we must confront it. Housing first has been my motto. That is, if you can get shelter, permanent shelter for those on the street and end their violence and the violence that they're subject to, the weather, the uncertainty, the mental issues. They will deal with the issues of mental illness, drug and alcohol abuse, and job placement in their own speed. And we have an opportunity as a city to get that shelter, to say we can do this. We are the richest country in the history of the world. It is unacceptable to have homeless on the street.
While we're on the subject of homeless, as you know, a very large percentage of the homeless population are children. And many of them are children who were in the foster care program, but they've aged out of the program, and they have no money, and they have no family to help them out. What do you have in store? What sort of plans do you have for these young individuals?
I mean, that's a good question that has not come up in any of the debates we have been at, and I have not thought that through directly, but I will tell you how I would approach the issue. And when Nathan announced his support in the last question, I must tell you that I have the support of most of the educators in San Diego and those involved in education. But clearly, as I said earlier when we talked about some of education, our city must take care of all its children. And we're taking, that is, it's all our responsibility to use all of our assets, whether it's public institutions, as I mentioned, our citizens. I see some older people in the audience. We tend to say to older people, you're finished, you know, your wisdom, your experience, you retire, we don't use you anymore. I started when I was president of the school board, an adopt a grandparent program in the city schools, where grandparents could come into school, tutor, be mentors, share their experiences. Most of our young kids don't have grandparents living in a home. Most of the grandparents don't have their grandkids living in a home. Let's combine them. It's incredible. It changes the whole atmosphere of school when you have that. And people are contributing to their community in ways. And we can do that with the foster children that you mentioned. We have to make sure, of course, that not only are they taken care of in a physical setting, and there's such incredible organizations and people in our city that will do this in a volunteer way, but we must make sure that their health care is taken care of, that their education is taken care of, and we try to make sure that they can get jobs or go to higher education. So it's a holistic approach that we have to do, and we have to assume the responsibility as a people who live in a city, in a community, where we have to take the view we're all in this together.
Yeah, on the education issue, I spent a better part of 8 months with Council President Tony Young going out and working on these issues and learning, and I'm honored to be the choice of school board members like Todd Gutshaw right here in this area, the principal of Los Penasquitos Elementary right here, Deanne McLaughlin, teachers like John Kennett and others, because they know we have a real commitment to that younger generation, to not only improving their education, but improving their quality of life, improving the economic base. You know, the quickest way you can help is to help their parents get good paying jobs. That is the fastest thing you can do. But it's always struck me that children are forced to pay the price for the mistakes of adults. Adults, if they're in a difficult situation, they've usually made some decision along the way, and we want to help them. But children didn't do anything wrong. That child in the foster care system didn't do anything wrong. They didn't make a bad decision. They weren't irresponsible. The child that's homeless, is struggling, they didn't do anything wrong. And I think we should all feel a sense of not only compassion, but a sense of obligation to say that for the most innocent for children, we've got to do a better job. I was honored to play a role in helping ensure the restoration of healthy families, which have suffered potential budget cuts, which is health insurance for hundreds of thousands of poor children. Because it's not that child's fault that they don't have health insurance. I was honored to be a leading member of the Select Committee on Foster Care, to work on these issues, to work and address legislation related to foster care. I've authored legislation related to homeless youth, to keep them off the street that got signed into law. I've authored legislation to make adoption an easier process, because that's a personal issue for me. Both of my boys were adopted. And I'll tell you, as mayor, I will continue to play a leadership issue on issues related to foster care, health care for children, on issues related to adoption, because although it may not fall under the city charter or the city purview, if you're going to be a leader of a city, we have to care tremendously about those that have been left behind. And I think there's things you can do supporting state legislation, supporting federal legislation. Maybe we'll help Bob stay in Congress, where he can go back and get some more congressional help with these types of things. But you are never, ever, ever, as a leader in a city, going to leave children behind.
Thank you. I appreciate those responses. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to be talking about some renewable sources. So how would you, how would an incentive for, how would you, I'm sorry. I got stuck. Our landfill is close to capacity, mostly because people are placing recyclable items or green cuttings in their regular cans. And some cities throughout the country fine residents for placing inappropriate items in garbage cans due to limited space in their landfills, and to improve the rate of recycling, which is very important. How do you plan on reducing inappropriate items from being placed in our regular garbage cans to help extend the life of our landfill?
Well, yeah, there's a number of things that you can do. Because that is part of the conversation that doesn't happen. You know, at some point you're going to run out of place to put these things. So how do you reduce that? And there are cities that are out there that you can go find examples of. You know, one of the cities I was studying and taking a look at actually added another can that it would use for food waste because it's one of the easiest to convert into energy. And so it was a program that just works. I mean, it worked in terms of actual return on the investment. It worked in terms of reducing the capacity in the landfills. And so I think we need to go out there. We need to commission a look at all the cities in the world and figure out who's doing it the best and where can we take those great ideas. How can we provide folks a real incentive? I don't think that we need to find you. You can do a carrot or a stick. You know, I prefer the carrot approach. How do we provide a real incentive to get you to reduce the amount of waste, to get you to increase the amount of recycles? But I think that there's a huge opportunity that we need to have a broader conversation, right, about how we tackle things like our energy policy. I've been a leader in the Assembly, someone who supported the Renewable Portfolio Standard, who supported the California Solar Initiative, when we did the ribbon cutting right here at Soitec, not far from here, where we added hundreds of good paying jobs. They cited my legislative work and the things we've done as making a real difference. And so there are opportunities where we can take something that someone sees as a problem and turn it into an opportunity by putting in place programs to convert waste into energy. Now we're putting people back to work. We're helping solve problems. We can have broader conversations that include not only protecting our landfills, protecting our open space, protecting our environment, but I think that's going to take a mayor that's going to be willing to come in and bring a fresh set of eyes, a new way of looking at things, and say if we can build it from scratch for today's world, what would it look like, and then have the actual energy and ability to go in there and get it done. Thank you.
You know, we have the slogan, "We are America's finest city."
I can't hear you.
And, you know, that's mainly the weather, and both of us have pledged as mayor not to make the weather worse than it can. But, you know, we ought to be America's most recycling city, most sustainable city, most, you know, a lot of livable city. Those are the things that really will raise not only our individual quality of life, but our community's quality of life. And we have made great steps in this city, making it more convenient to recycle. But we you know, this is something that the government can make it easier and set up institutions and set up incentives, but there has to be a sense of community responsibility. People have to realize that we're, as I said before, we're all in this together. And whether it's recycling, which we must do, whether it's move to a renewable energy kind of city, we should become the renewable energy capital of our nation. And regardless of what half the Congress thinks, all members of his former party, that you know, global climate change exists, and we have got to deal with it. And each one of us has to have responsibility for that. You know, it took a while for each one of us to understand we have recycling responsibility, or that we conserve water, which